Hey, good afternoon, folks, and welcome to another edition of An Hour with Bob. I have a friendly guest, a guy I happen to like. He's the Attorney General of the state of Rhode Island. His name is Peter Neronha, and he's with us today to talk about whatever we decide to talk about in the box. This is my box I got from Thailand, real wood, all wood box, and it has questions in it. And the questions, good, bad, and ugly. It could be anything. And in fact, I'm going to let the Attorney General pull a question out of here.
All
Just
right.
go, don't look, don't look.
Don't look, I can't look like a raffle ticket, right?
It is, yeah. Oh, you got a big one. Actually,
That means they'll have a long answer.
this is a question that I happen to like. I don't remember if I took this out of National Geographic or I took this picture out of Time magazine. It was one or the other. Mm-hmm. And it's what that is waste. It's trash.
Yeah?
Pulled from the sea in this case. And the question is plastic pollution.
Yeah.
I know you're big on that, right? Mm-hmm. Straws, bottles. You know, Norway reclaims 97% of their trash, their plastics. 97%.
Amazing.
And my question, I guess, not only to you, but to all politicians is, why don't we go back to returnable bottles? When we were kids, we used to make money.
5 cents.
Right?
5
we used
cents.
to go around collecting the bottles.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's how we made money.
Yeah, the bottle bills. Remember all those bottle bills were passed. Still, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, frankly. And, sort of as Attorney General, I'm not making the laws at the General Assembly. But look, I'll say this. I grew up in Jamestown, and I live there now. My dad was born there. My grandfather came there from the Azores when he was 3. And so, I walk that shoreline a lot, and you see particularly after a storm, a tremendous amount of plastic debris on the shoreline. And, folks try to clean it up once or twice a year, but there's no question that this, plastic doesn't deteriorate, at least not in a short period of time. Exactly, and it builds up. And of course, I've never seen it personally, but I'm told there are these sites, well offshore where it's just this sort of, miles and miles and miles of plastic all kind of pulled together in the middle of the sea. So obviously bad for sea life and the fish that we eat and ultimately our environment right here at home in Rhode Island. I mean, I think that has been something that's been a priority for me since I became Attorney General is recognizing how important our natural resources are to our state, not only our economy, but our well-being and the enjoyment we take from it as Rhode Islanders, and trying to protect that and making sure that other regulatory bodies are doing what they should to protect it has really been a priority for me.
Well, what about litter? I mean, just you see the streets, there's litter everywhere. People don't care like they used to care.
Yeah, look, it's a pet peeve of mine. I'll be candid.
It's a pet peeve of mine, too.
It is, and I've never quite understood the notion of, even if it's a cigarette butt, throw it on the ground, stamp it out, and leave it there. There's a place to dispose of those, too. Look, we as a state, as a people, either care about our communities and how they look, or we don't. I mean, it's sort of like, if you take pride in your community, if you take pride on the natural environment around you, you don't do that. And I think most people don't. It's as usual. It's the few people who don't care about the environment as much that have a negative impact for all of us.
Well, is it because of the lack of enforcement that's throwing stuff around?
I don't know how much of an enforcement thing it is. I mean, the reality is, whether it should be or not, littering is not high on our list of criminal priorities. I think it's, how do I put this? I think if you were to litter in front of my children, they would look at you like,
My son too.
What is wrong with you? And I think part of that
is upbringing.
Yeah, and look, and sort of as we advance, I hope as a people, the tolerance for that goes down, and hopefully the end result gets better. But look, there's no question. I drive into Providence every day. I come off of the Gano Street exit, and I swing around, to get on South Main Street, and I'm amazed, particularly after a weekend, how much litter is just flying around down there. City goes back and picks it up after a weekend, but usually that Monday morning, I'm amazed at how much just trash is just blowing through Indiaport Park. It's appalling. Just it is. It's troublesome.
Yeah, and I think it's pride mostly.
Yeah.
I think it's lack thereof, lack of pride. That people don't care. They just throw things. I've seen kids. In fact, when my son was small, we were in a store one day, and we were behind these people, this woman and 2 kids, and they got ice cream bars, I guess. And they walked outside, and they were literally as close as you are to me right now from a trash barrel. And both the 2 kids and the mother took the wrapper off it and threw it on the ground. And my son said something to him. He was like 6 years old at the time. He goes, "Why are you throwing that on the ground? Why didn't you put it in the barrel?" And she was embarrassed. The mother was embarrassed, but they ended up picking him up.
Yeah, look, peer pressure works sometimes. Sometimes that's the best remedy.
Well, but you can say it to the wrong person.
Well, that's true. Yeah, certainly that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Self-help isn't always a smart thing. It's
All
true.
right, I'm going to do it this time.
All right.
Let me see what I got. I'm not looking. Let me see what I got. What do we got? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This is a different one. Let's see.
When you say "uh-oh" before you're about to read me a question, I get a little nervous, I have to admit.
Oh, here's one. This was one for me. This is one of mine. This isn't even yours, but I'm going to throw it to you anyway. It's not yours. It's the legislature. We could be saving millions and nationwide billions of dollars if go in the supermarket. You don't do any shopping in the supermarket?
Sure, every Saturday.
All right. When you walk by the deli area and you walk by the the food hanging up there, the hot dogs and all that stuff, a little cold there, isn't it?
Yeah.
How is it that if I leave my freezer door open 2 inches, stuff in my freezer thaws? They got stuff out there with no covers on it doesn't thaw because they got the freezers down not to 0 or 2 below. They get them down to like 20 below 0. And I know that all the supermarkets would be in favor of it. Initially, they wouldn't, but if it was required that they put doors or covers on all those things, so you wouldn't freeze walking by them, number one, and it would save an enormous amount of energy. But if everybody did it, if they were forced to do it, like Almax, can you believe
that's
that?
a
Oh my God.
remember.
Stop and Shop and Shores and all the other Dave's Market, if all of them did it, then it would save. They would be on equal footing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I guess. Look, it's not something I've ever really looked at. I mean, I have thought about it. I've gone into a Stop and Shop or another market, and you've been, amazed at how cold it is in there. I hadn't really thought of it in that context. I think, as we try to lower our energy costs, and as we lower our energy costs, we're saving the planet in a lot of ways.
Right.
I mean, first 7 years out of law school, I worked in downtown Boston in the financial district in a 30-story office tower. I mean, those lights are on all night long. Now, I don't know how you manage, turning off the lights in every large building in a major city, but think about how many lights are left on in commercial buildings all night long.
Yep.
How much energy use that is.
Well, first of all, they could save a ton of money by changing the lights,
Sure.
the kind of lights they use.
Sure. But even so, I mean, you're talking about a 30-story tower,
Right.
With lights on every floor, and you multiply that number of buildings, 100-fold across the city. Look, I don't have the answer. You don't want your buildings all dark, obviously, for lots of reasons. But I wonder sometimes, we as homeowners take lots of steps to try to preserve energy. We're taking a lot of steps to do that. We're putting in more insulation and better windows, and we're changing our light bulbs to LEDs.
Right.
And yet, I remember walking out of 100 Westminster and thinking, wow, there's a lot of lights on in this place as I'm walking out. But, no one's flipping the switch as we head out here. So anyway, as we sort of struggle with this issue of how do we change our energy consumption, not just to save money, but frankly to save the planet.
Exactly.
We have to be ready to think outside the box as well as inside it, Bob.
So in other words, I come up with something that nobody has thought about, right? All right, you'll pull one out.
All right, I won't look this time. Here we go.
All right, let's see what we got here. See if we got a good one here. The governor's mandate on frontline workers to vaccinate. What do you think of that?
Yeah, look, that's a policy choice, that the governor, and to some extent the General Assembly has to make. I mean, I think, in my view, choices like that have to be driven by the science. The truth is I'm married to a physician, and so we talk about her views on the vaccine and how important it is for her for her office and her patients to be safe, that she take the vaccine. As Attorney General, it's my job to defend the policy choices, whether it be the General Assembly or the governor or both. And it comes up in a lot of ways: truck tolling, continuing contracts, online gambling. I'm not a big fan of gambling, but if the General Assembly decides and the governor decides that we're going to do online gambling, well, it's my job as Attorney General to defend it.
Or defend it.
Right, and look, that's and I will do that every single time, except if I see something that is just so out of bounds that I don't feel like I can defend it. I haven't seen that yet in my 2 years as Attorney General. And look, on the vaccine mandate, it comes down to this: does the science support a mandate so that it keeps our people healthy
Right.
and safe? And let me just say this. A year ago, what were we talking about when it came to COVID? Where was the problem most acute? Where were we most concerned? Deaths and illness in nursing homes, right? Today, I have to believe that
That's the least problem.
Well, most everybody in a nursing home is now vaccinated.
Right, right.
They're not going anywhere. So the only way that the virus gets into the nursing home
Right.
is if someone brings it in.
Their
And
kids
so-
or their grandkids.
or workers.
Or
And-
workers.
And so the question then becomes, what steps are we going to do to make sure that people in those congregate settings are safe? To me, that's an example of the science driving what our policy should be.
Right.
So in other words, if we know that people in a nursing home who live there are vaccinated and they're not leaving, they're there, they're in a nursing home, they're not going out, they're not going to the market most of the time. So the only way they're going to get it is if somebody brings it in.
Yep.
Then don't we need to take steps to make sure that the people that are having contact with our folks in the nursing home are safe and are not likely to infect them, okay? Because we know there are breakthrough infections. To me, again, it's a year ago we were most concerned about nursing homes.
the elderly
That's
in
where the
the nursing
tragedy
home.
was. That's where the outrage was. If you remember, there was a big problem down in New York over that.
Yes.
Then Governor Cuomo was taking a lot of heat on that issue. Today, in the context of vaccine mandates or any other steps that we take, what are we doing with respect to these steps that is going to make people safer or less safe? That's really what the conversation should be about in my mind.
And it's kind of crazy how, depending on what part of the country you're in, it dictates how they feel about it.
Oh, sure. Look, here in Rhode Island, you have policy choices made by the governor and the General Assembly to take steps to protect, that in their minds, that I support.
Based on the science.
Based on the science that I support, that protect masks, for example, in schools, that protect students. Then you have public officials in other states, Florida, for example, where they don't want children to wear masks. And so
Right.
depending on where you are in the country, the issue is being handled very, very differently. And of course, you see, based on
The
some
results
of the data
is
that I've
what
seen,
you see.
you see the results are different. I had a son who spent a summer in Kansas. He was working for Textron at Beechcraft and Cessna Airlines. And I have another son who's in medical school at Washington University in St. Louis. And what they're seeing in the Midwest in terms of COVID, even back then, that we're talking about end of July, early August, was very different from what we were seeing here in Rhode Island. And a lot of that was because of much lower vaccination rates in those parts of the country.
Right, right. And it's almost still the case. All right, we're going to put this down here, but we're still going to pull from it without looking. Now, go ahead, go.
Another one for
Go,
me.
get
huh?
another one.
Here you go.
Oh, you got two.
I get two. There
You
you
got
go.
two. All
Bonus
right,
round.
that'll make it easier here. Let's see. This is a good one. Your legislative success this year. What have you accomplished as Attorney General? I know there was a drug reclassification, right?
Yeah, there were a few things, Bob, this year that I feel really good about. One is we were able to finally, after 3 years, to get a bill passed that will really protect Rhode Island consumers.
That's the Deceptive
Trade Practices Act. The reality was that because of the way the Supreme Court many years ago, almost 30 years ago, maybe almost 40 years ago, interpreted that statute, my office was not able to bring an action against an entity, a company, a business that was treating Rhode Islanders unfairly if they were regulated by anybody else, state or federal. So think healthcare, think dental practices, think anybody regulated by the Department of Business Regulation.
regulations, yeah.
Think of anyone regulated by the FDIC, so banking. So no matter how outrageous the practice, no matter how much
You couldn't bring
we
it?
couldn't bring an action the way the Supreme Court had interpreted that law. We were a holdout amongst, there were only 2 states, including Rhode Island, Michigan was the other, where we had this limitation on our authority. The legislature finally made that change. We had that bill up there for 3 years. We finally got it over the finish line this year with the help of a lot of strong supporters in the General Assembly, House and Senate. Frankly, it's a change in House leadership really helped us there. And as a result, Rhode Islanders today, as consumers, are in a much better place than they were for really the last 40 years. I mean, as the people's lawyer, we can now get out there and protect them from those that would take advantage of them. And look, that's not anti-business. People will say that kind of thing is
Right.
anti-business.
Yeah.
It's not, because businesses that are doing it the right way, businesses that don't take advantage of Rhode Islanders are left at a disadvantage against businesses that do.
Right.
So it's pro-business, pro-good business, and it's pro-consumer. That was a good result. we were able to make a significant change in how we are handling possession of small amounts of drugs for personal use. That had been a 3-year felony. It's now a 2-year misdemeanor. The reality is that is a difference in only this way. It will ensure that people who have a drug problem will get the services they need. And what it means
Rather than going to jail. You mean.
And they don't go to jail anyway, Bob.
No.
And so what was happening was they wouldn't go to jail, and it was a felony.
Right.
They're not going to go to jail now either, but it's going to be a misdemeanor.
Which is a big difference on a person's life, career.
Correct. So when you're out getting a job, you're trying to get
Yes,
housing.
exactly.
That difference between a felony and a misdemeanor really matters. I want to say it again. These are not people who were going to jail when it was a felony. These were not drug dealers.
Right.
These were not people who had drugs to sell it to somebody else.
Yeah, but they were getting charged with a felony.
They were getting charged with a felony, simple possession, meaning possession just for me of a small amount of narcotics. They weren't going to jail. We studied every single case, and nobody went to jail for that crime. And so as a result, my reaction was this: let's keep it in the Superior Court and bring all the Superior Court services to the problem. Let's treat it as what it is. To me, a felony is a case where jail ought to be on the table.
Right.
If you committed a felony, that's a serious crime. You may not go to jail. It may not be the right solution.
But you could go to
But
jail.
you could go to jail. If we're not sending people to jail anyway, all we're doing is hanging a millstone around their neck so that once they're out of recovery and back into the world, we're making it harder for them. That's not good for their long-term recovery, and it's not good for the rest of us either.
Well, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. As a property owner, I look at that. That's one of the things I look at. I
Sure.
look at a BCI check.
Sure. And look, for serious crime, you ought to have that information, right?
Right.
But, when, a convicted felon means something to somebody, what that means to most people, that's a dangerous person.
Right.
I don't want them around me or my children.
Right.
For somebody who once used drugs themselves but is now over that, treating that as a misdemeanor just makes more sense from a criminal justice perspective. And what it does, too, is it allows my prosecutors, who have way too many cases than they should, over 200 cases each in the drug unit, they can now focus on the drug dealers that are truly driving this problem. You can hang, look, I used to be in the situation as an assistant attorney general. You got all these simple possession cases, low-level cases. You're hanging around at the courthouse, trying to dispose of them as these felonies. Now we'll be able to move them much faster
Right.
through the system, and my folks will have more time to focus on the drug dealers that are at the root of the problem. Because those drug dealers not only are at the root of the drug problem, they're at the root of the violence problem. There's a connection between gun violence
absolutely.
and drug dealing, and the more we focus on those drug dealers, we'll be able to bring down violence and hopefully make a dent in the drug trade.
Well, you think that's the problem going on in Providence with the violence and the shootings?
Yeah, look, I think there are a number of things driving that. I think, number one, there's a lot of guns out there right now. There's just a lot of guns out there, and there are a lot of high-capacity magazines. The high-capacity magazine is a hidden part of this story, Bob, and the reason it's important is this. The people who shoot at other people in Providence are not trained shooters. They don't go to the range,
I
right?
know.
They don't have a military or a police background.
I laugh because near my house there was a shooting behind a store that I frequent, actually. And the guy shot 27 shots.
You're making my point for
and
me.
didn't hit anybody.
Well, you're making my point, right? But here's the difference. When you've got a high-capacity magazine, which will hold up to 30 shots, and we're finding these all over the city, and you shoot 27 times, your odds are going to be a lot higher than if you're shooting 10 times or 5 times, right?
Right.
So, and you're right. Every scene we go to, or nearly every scene, you see those the public will see them on Channel 10 or 12 or Channel 6. You see those little plastic cards with a number.
all over the place.
Every one of those is
Where
a
the
shell case.
casing is.
And
Where
you see
casings
20,
are.
25, 27.
Right.
You shoot 27 times, I don't care how bad a shot you are, the odds of you hitting somebody go way up. And I think that's driving some of the, of the shootings that have been turning into homicides simply because there's more bullets in the air. So that's part of it. Certainly neighborhood rivalries and drug dealing is part of it. We see guns and drugs together
gangs.
all the time. Yeah, so that's an ongoing problem. I give the Providence Police Department a tremendous amount of credit. They are on every one of these cases. The reality is, though, that they don't have enough police officers on the street. And until you get enough police officers out there, the ability to really put a dent in this problem, I think, is a challenge.
But I think they've really affected the whole being a cop idea for people. I think the amount of recruits is way down
Sure.
because of this whole thing, this anti-cop thing around the country.
Yeah, look, there have been cases around the country where police have stepped over the line. And those are the ones that you see when you turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox. Pick your station, doesn't matter to me, or you read about it in the newspaper. Certainly those cases have to be addressed, and there are some instances here in Rhode Island we've had to address them. I believe, I've always believed it, and I believe it today, that the vast majority of police officers are going to work every day. They're not paid anywhere near what the danger they're exposed to warrants. and they're trying to help people, and they're trying to keep people safe. And all they want to do is do their job and go home to their family at night. That's the vast majority of police officers. But when you, it's like anything, people get into public service or they teach and they become police officers because of the love of the work in the public service.
Right.
When the love of the work and the public service aspect of it begins to become diminished, they rightfully ask themselves, well, could I be doing something else? And I think that's why we are seeing difficulty in recruiting. But at the same time, we have an opportunity, I think, in law enforcement to kind of rethink and reimagine how we do policing, to sort of, to maybe reach out to people who might not have considered the career otherwise, implement the best training practices, learn, recognize that we have a community trust problem in some places, and take the steps we need to address it. And that's why, the body cam legislation, something else that we got through this year, I think is really important. It really helps us understand, doesn't tell the whole story all the time, but helps us understand what happened during a police community encounter. Look, sometimes everybody behaved perfectly. Yeah. Sometimes the police officer didn't do what he should have done. I think that's the minority of situations, but if it happened, we're going to see it. And if it's the community member, if it's a person in the community who was out of line, we're going to see that too. Look, as a prosecutor, all I ever wanted was to know what happened. I want to know what the truth was.
Sure.
That's all I wanted. If I had a case, I had one. I wasn't getting paid by the cases I brought, right? I got paid by doing the cases that I needed to do.
Right.
So I wanted to know what happened. And body cams help with that. They don't tell you everything. You just look at, your eyesight is able to see so much more than a body cam.
Sure.
Just your field of vision is so much broader. But they're helpful. And by hopefully getting them on, most police officers in the state of Rhode Island will get better results in the criminal cases we bring.
Well, also, I look at cause and effect. A lot of these cases around the country where they really nailed the cop, and made him look real bad. Mm-hmm. In some of those cases, the cause created the effect. Mm-hmm. Somebody did something that caused that situation.
Well, look, perhaps, and I don't dispute what you're saying. I will say this though, that we in law enforcement have an obligation at all times to remain professional, to keep our cool and follow our training. And if we're not in a position to do that, then we're not doing what we need to do. I think we do it. I think police officers do it the vast majority of the time. When they don't, then they need to be held accountable. And what accountable means depends on the circumstance. It could be some disciplinary action. In the most extreme instances, it could mean a criminal charge. But what we try to do when we see those cases, and look, there are some instances where we brought cases against police officers, and other times we reviewed it and we haven't. What we try to do is take a fair approach to it. Recognize how officers are trained, understand what the best practices are, often retain a police use of force expert who can tell us what a police officer is trained to do and where the line is and whether it went over it or not, and really just trying to be fair in the end. But look, the reality is that community police trust could be better, and we in law enforcement, myself included, have to take responsibility for improving it.
Speaking of law enforcement, what do you think of what the mayor did in Providence, making a guy that worked in the recreation department a major? Yeah,
look, that's not my shop. I don't like telling people how to run their shop. I don't like people telling me how to run my shop. I don't manage a police department. I will say this: I think the other promotions, Kevin Lanny and Henry Remolina, who are both going to be majors, who I've worked with, and that's why I mention it, are going to be terrific majors. I think they are top notch. Came up with the ranks and do a great job. But how the mayor and the chief and the commissioner decide to place people in appointments is not something that I would typically weigh in on. Again, it's I'm not expecting people to weigh in on who I choose as my deputy attorney general. I mean, the public can. I mean, the voters can. Everybody in my office should be, to a certain extent, a referendum on me, because I picked them, particularly at the top. But in terms of running somebody else's office, I try to not insert myself into that.
Now, is Young still there?
Patrick Youngs?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's still there.
Has he been there the longest? It's got to be close.
Yeah, he is, I think. Yeah, Randy White moved on a few years ago.
Right.
Randy was an institution in the office. Patrick is still there,
Oh, he's about an institution.
He is,
right?
and what a great resource for an office that tends to skew young a little bit. Younger attorneys are constantly coming into the office, and somebody like Patrick Youngs, for your viewers who may not know him, has handled some incredibly important and significant cases.
He sure has. That's why I know him. I mean, I know him from way back.
And handled them, with great integrity and frankly brilliantly. And so, as you're a brand new lawyer, as I was at one point, you got your first case, and you're like, how do I deal with this? And when you can walk into an office like Patrick Young's and get Patrick to kind of give you some guidance and tell you what you're not thinking of, or you don't need to worry too much about that, that's a huge help to our folks in the office. So yeah, he's a Rhode Island treasure, and I wish he was more well known to more Rhode Islanders.
And he should be. He should be. Well, I remember him.
That's good.
And not for any bad thing I did. I just happen to know him.
Yeah, he's a good man.
All right, what do we got? Pull another one. I know I got one there, but I'm going to have you grab another one. You go for the big one here. Okay. Let's see what this one is. Oh, no, this is a personal, so you don't want to do that. We'll talk about that after.
All right.
That's what I did that Ancestry thing.
Oh yeah.
Well, I might as well do it. I did that.
Sure.
I did that Ancestry thing. Now, my last name is Venturini. My father was 100% Italian. My mother was French, Irish, and English. Half French, a quarter Irish, quarter English, which would make me half Italian, right? A quarter French, 12.5% Irish, 12.5% English, right?
Yeah.
This thing come back that I am 42% French, 31% English, Wales, and Northern European, 15% Irish and Scottish, 5% German, 3% Greek, and 2% Italian.
Well, that's a lot of diversity in there, Bob. You should have a good worldview with all that.
2% Italian. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe my mother had something to do with the milkman or something. But my son did it, and he comes back as 25% Italian, which would make sense.
Right.
If I'm 50% Italian, right?
Right.
So it worked, it jumped me, I guess.
Look, I've never done it, my mother's German, was born and raised there until came over when she was 19.
And your
My
father's
dad's Portuguese. Yeah. So, and then my wife is 100% Swedish. So my kids are more Swedish than they are Portuguese or German. But one of the funny stories in our family was that my wife's dad was Swedish and his brother-in-law was Norwegian, and the Swedes and the Norwegians have had a rivalry over the years.
Yes.
And so when they did the Ancestry thing and they found that my father-in-law had a little bit of Norwegian in him, they had a lot of fun with it.
Wow. Well, that's where your height comes in.
Yeah, well, that's my wife's family. I'm not sure where my height comes in because the Portuguese are not generally known for great height.
I'm thinking wrong there.
So I'm told I had a German great-grandfather who was well over 6'8". So maybe that's where I get it from.
Wow.
Who knows?
Because I think the Norwegians are the tallest people. I think they are the tallest people. Have you been to Sweden?
I have not. No, it's on the list. My wife, as you might understand, wants to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not yet as well traveled as I like to be. Hopefully there'll be time for that down the road.
Yeah, it would be great. Oh, how have you been able to interact with the community during the pandemic? Tell us about your community office locations.
Yeah, so we were.
You set up locations.
We did. Yeah, we did. We have one on Broad Street in Providence. We just opened one in Wiggins Village, which is in another part of Providence. I felt, even before I became Attorney General, frankly, back to when I was U.S. Attorney, it's really important for the community to understand, who we are as their attorneys and who we are as prosecutors. That certainly identifying threats to public safety and taking strong action against the most serious threats is a big part of the job. But we have a broader role than that. When I was working in the Obama administration, the president challenged us, and Attorney General's Holder.
Oh, you were a federal prosecutor.
Yeah, I was U.S. Attorney.
U.S. Attorney.
In the Obama administration. They really challenged us to be community problem solvers because the more you can, the way you bring our crime down is not just through enforcement and punishment. You've got to get young people before they get into this cycle of violence, and you've got to make sure that when people have paid their debt to society, they've got a way to kind of get back on their feet so they don't come back. When I was a young Attorney General, I was in courtroom number 9, which is where the people on probation come back to have their violation hearings heard. And actually, then later Attorney General Lynch, Patrick Lynch, and I were in there together as young prosecutors. And Bob, I can't tell you how many people were coming through time and time again. We alluded to it a little bit earlier.
Yep.
There are a lot of people in Rhode Island that are entitled to have their record expunged. Entitled to it.
Which we were going to get to. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're entitled to it. So it's not like we're giving them a new right. They're entitled to it. They just don't know how to do it.
Right.
Because to get it done costs money. And so I decided pretty early on, before COVID in 19, that one of the ways we could reach people, I learned, look, I can go out in the community and talk about how to be a prosecutor or civil rights. Nobody's going to come to that. It's like anything. If you're selling, if you want to sell something, you better have something that somebody
That
wants.
they want, yeah.
Correct.
Something that affects them.
Correct. And it was pretty clear to me that this was a service we could provide. Nobody else was providing it. These were people who were entitled to it under the law.
Right.
The only thing preventing them from getting it done was economic means. And that if we got it done, it would help them, okay, get to a better place in their lives, be more economically secure.
Back to where we were talking about before.
Right, lower the chances of recidivism, and they would see my office in a way differently. And why is that important? Because when I have to make decisions that make people unhappy, okay, I understand not everybody's going to agree with my decisions, but the more trust and confidence I have from the community, even if they disagree with me, the better it is going to be for the overall result. And I got to tell you, those expungement clinics, the ones we did in person, were an enormous success. We did 3 of them before COVID hit, 1 on Broad Street at our office, 1 at the Institute for the Study and Practice of Nonviolence in Providence on Oxford Street, and 1 at CCRI in Newport. And we helped over 400, closer to 500 people in person understand whether they were eligible.
That was going to be my next question.
And then if they were, and over 60% were. So over 60%
Wow.
of people who came to us were and just didn't know how to do it. So then we let them know that they were eligible. We helped them fill out the forms.
Right.
We had their signatures notarized, told them which court to go to. So we got them to the 10-yard line. And then it's on them to get it over the finish line. And then once COVID hit, we started doing it online because obviously we couldn't, be in the same space. Now, and I got to tell you something, Bob. One thing that made me really proud about that work was that was all done by my office after the normal business hours. So usually.
Oh, really?
Because you want to do it when people are home from work. So we would start at 5:30, and go to 8:30 at night in all 3 of those locations. And we did it on a volunteer basis from the office. People who wanted to help out did. And I'd get 17, 18 people. And you'd have 200, at the Institute, we had 200 people walk through the door. It was like, you looked outside, it was like Halloween night.
There'd be a line down the
everybody's
street.
out trick-or-treating, right? There's people all over the street.
Right.
But it was really great for our folks to see the community in that way, and I hope it was great for the community to see us in that way. Well, look, we've got a public safety mission, we're gonna do it, that's the heartland. But we can be so much more than that, criminally and in our civil division, if we decide to be active. We can sit there and let the work come to us, okay? I can stay in my office, and plenty of work's going to walk through the door at the AG's office. But I think what separates the job from a job that has an impact is how active you are. When you see a problem, are you willing to ask yourself, can we do something here? Can we be active in this space? And if we can be, we ought to do something. Because that's how you help the people of Rhode Island. And if you're not interested in doing that, you really don't belong in the job.
Right. No, you're definitely the people's attorney general.
That's exactly who we are. That's exactly who we are. Look, that is a great opportunity. When you can get up every morning, as I've done now since 1996, when you get up every morning and you know that you're going to work, and I was in private practice, so I know what that world's like. I did that for 7 years at a big law firm in Boston. I know what that's like. But when you can get up every morning and go to work for the people of the state, that is an incredible privilege, and I'm so blessed to have had the opportunity for most of my legal career. And I know it's incredibly meaningful for me, and I know it is true for everybody in the office as well.
Now, what changed you? What changed you from private practice? What caused that?
Yeah, look, I did, to be candid, I had a fair amount of student debt coming out of law school, so I had to get that paid off. So I took the best paying job I could get, and that was at a 400 lawyer firm in Boston, one of the biggest and best ones up there. Spent 7 years here, got out of debt, learned a lot about how to practice law under pressure and at a high level. But I wanted to do 2 things. Really, I wanted more freedom to do cases the way I wanted. It's hard to do that in a large law firm where it's just so structured. And I wanted to be in a courtroom. I wanted to see if I could be a decent trial lawyer. I don't think you really appreciate public service. A lot of people talk about it, but I don't think it hits you until you're actually doing it. And it either impacts you or it doesn't. So I wanted to get in a courtroom and have more freedom to do cases the way I wanted to. And so I started at the AG's office. I went to the U.S. Attorney's office as an assistant U.S. attorney, tried cases as a line prosecutor there. Then I was fortunate to be the U.S. attorney. We talked about that, now the AG. But there's something about public service for some of us. Patrick Youngs is one of those people, where it gets in your system and the reward is so high that whatever sacrifice you make, and they're mostly economic, is a sacrifice worth making. I've never regretted it, and frankly, I've never really thought about doing anything else.
Wow. That's a good answer. All right, we got another one for you. I'll pull this one. Well, I'm going to pull a couple just so I get ahead of the game here. You having fun yet?
Oh, I love coming in here.
It was your idea. Well, not your idea.
Go into the box.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to come out.
I like that when you said we where'd we run into each other? Where was it?
Wasn't it the Bristol Parade in Bristol?
Was it? I think, did we run into each other twice, I think?
Yeah, but you were at the Bristol Parade.
Yeah,
this year,
yeah.
weren't you? Yeah, we're right at the
I
start.
walked the damn parade, yeah.
Yeah. I walked out to the start, and then I walked.
Bad knee and all. I walked with McKee. I walked most of the parade with him, and I finally got in his car at the very end. My knee was killing me.
That was my first time in Bristol. It was a great parade. And it wasn't that hot, thankfully, but that was my first Bristol Parade. That's
Come on.
That's parades.
Portuguese, and it's your first time in Bristol?
Well, look, they'll only let you march in Bristol if you are in office.
That's right.
And I couldn't make it in 2019. I can't remember why. It was a family matter. 2020, there was no parade, if you remember.
Exactly.
So this was the first year that I really, as a practical matter, could march. And so I had no idea how long the route was.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, it was great, though. A lot of great people came out. And it's always good to get the feedback from the public when you're marching. Some of it is a little pointed, but most of it was great. And when you march with the other elected officials, if they're kind of yelling something at you that's not very complimentary, you can always look over your shoulder and say,
blame him.
They must be talking about him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I did that parade. I had a float in that parade 5 years running.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I won 3 times. I won the best of whatever.
Really?
Yeah, the most patriotic one year, the best float in the parade one other year.
It's a great parade. Yeah, people really come out for that one.
All right. Oh, I'm back to this one. I think we already talked about this. Body cameras for state police. Now they wearing body cameras in the state police?
No, well, so it's for all the. Here's the backstory, Bob, on the body cameras. We talked about why I think they're important, and so. There were 2 things. Once you realize they're important, the question is, can we get this done? What are the problems, potential problems? How do we get it done? And one of them is funding. And, we didn't want to be in a situation where the legislature passed a law that said every city or town has to get them, because that's an unfunded mandate, and we don't want to put that
It's a lot of money.
It is. We don't want to put that burden on the taxpayers. So my office did 2 things. Number one was, let's try to crunch the numbers to find out what it's going to really cost, to drive that cost down as low as possible to do it. Let's see if there are sources of funding, cases that we bring on behalf of the people of the state, federal funding, and potentially some state funding. And we were able to do that and keep that funding level, pretty low, pretty reasonable, actually. And so the legislature passed legislation which authorized body cams, provided some funding along with federal funding and funding from my office. But cities and towns don't have to do it. They can access the money, but they have to sign onto some best practices and policies, like when do you turn them on, when do you turn them off, how do you store them, how do you protect people's privacy. So I expect, so we're in the process of actually drafting with public input those policies and procedures. Once they're done, then the money will be available to those cities and towns that decide to go with body cameras. And it's my hope that most, if not all of them, will do it. Look, police community encounters where there are 2 sides to the story.
Exactly.
Don't just happen in Providence. They happen in my hometown of Jamestown, and they happen in Charleston and in Newport and in other places. So I think it's a good step forward. And it's one of the things I think that I'll look back at, at the end of my tenure as Attorney General, and feel good about hopefully making the state take a step forward to make our criminal justice system more reliable and one in which people have more confidence.
How many state police are there?
How many members of the state police? Number of troopers?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I was over a couple hundred, I think, but you'd have to ask Colonel Manning. Yeah. And the state police are getting them. And again, Providence already has them. City of Newport already has them. And this program will allow every other city and town in the state, if they want them, to
if
also
they can
get
fund
them.
it.
But the funding is there from the state.
Oh, it is?
There's state funding, and there's funding from my office from money that we recover by bringing lawsuits against big companies around the country. And there's also federal funding available. Because I think the federal government also recognizes, and they're putting body cameras on federal agents now too, they recognize how important this is. And that wasn't the case when I was U.S. Attorney. Federal agents did not wear body cameras, they're wearing them now.
Wow. FBI agents?
Yeah, when they execute a search warrant, when they go into a building, ATF, DEA, they're wearing body cameras.
Now, what happens if somebody didn't put his camera on?
Well, look, that's a matter of discipline, and there's been a lot of back and forth as to whether that discipline is appropriate or not, right? So I don't mean discipline in terms of a criminal charge. I'm talking about, do you get a letter in your file, you get suspended for a day or two,
exactly,
that kind of thing. Need to walk a foot post, whatever they're making them do, to make life a little less pleasant. Though I'm a big believer in the foot post, I should say.
Yeah?
Well, I think that's how you know people in your community. It's not just cities or towns. I remember, when my boys were little, we used to do a lot of walking in Jamestown. And if you have children, or anybody has children knows, kids like to get ahead of their parents.
Right.
Mom and dad are maybe 30 feet behind. The kids are kind of off on their own, quote unquote. My kids are little, they're as high as these chairs. And we were walking up the main street in Jamestown, and there was a police officer on a detail, I think for a funeral at St. Matthew's Church. And as my kids approached, he kind of bent down and just started talking to them. And to me, that's what community policing is all about, whether you're in Providence or in Jamestown, is interacting with people of all ages, particularly young people, and building that trust so that they see you as more than just somebody with a badge and a gun, that they see you as a person that's there to help them. And, you want your children turning to a police officer when they're in trouble, no matter what community you live in. And you want your police officers to see themselves, again, as community problem solvers. And I think we can get there. I think a lot of police officers today, particularly around, see themselves exactly that way. So it's significantly better.
That's me.
Not me.
That's me. Sorry about that.
It's your show.
It's my show. I can do that. I didn't turn it off. Anyway, what about going back to the, back in my day, they had the beat cops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, one of my best advisors, counsels, was Ken Madden, who was my first assistant U.S. attorney when I was U.S. attorney. So he was number 2. And look, if there was an important decision to be made, Ken Madden was in my office helping me make it. His dad was, I believe, a sergeant at the end on the Providence Police Department. They had the call boxes.
Yeah, they used to have to go in
With a
key
key.
every hour, once an hour,
Correct,
right?
correct. They had a call box. And yeah, look, policing has changed. The phones, you are accessible all the time at the drop of a hat, which improves response time. But it's also probably difficult sometimes for them to kind of get away. I'm a big believer in, when you're not on the job,
downtime.
You need to do that, because if you don't, I don't think you'll be as effective. And of course, in today's environment, there really isn't downtime for really anybody. You really got to force it upon yourself sometime.
Right. Well, that's what this does to you.
It does?
It destroys your downtime.
Sure.
Because everybody has access to you.
Sure.
At all times,
Sure.
as we just noticed. Health insurance rate increases.
Yeah.
They requested another health increase?
Yeah, look, I think it's, Bob, more broadly, we have really tried to step up our role to protect Rhode Islanders when it comes to their health care, how it's delivered, its quality, its reliability, and how much they pay for it. One example is the case involving Roger Williams and Fatima Hospital, where, in my view, the company that owned them was trying to make an ownership change, but having put those hospitals in perilous financial condition. And I just was not going to sign off on that ownership change until I knew we had money in escrow to weather bad times that our experts saw coming. I didn't want to be in a situation where a year or two down the road, Fatima and Roger Williams are going into bankruptcy when I had an opportunity to solve for it now rather than kick the can down the road. I mean, to me, that's what it means to be an active attorney general. Getting out ahead of a problem and solving for it now rather than waiting for
it's too late.
Waiting for the tidal wave to hit you in 2 years.
Right.
There were a lot went into that, and I feel really good about how that came out in the end. Health insurance rates. To me, it reminds me a lot of college tuition. I put 2 boys through college, my wife and I, and college tuition goes up every year. You're not really sure why it's going up, but you can pretty much guaranteed it's going to go up about $2,500 every year. I mean, you know what it is, from freshman year to senior year. And to me, there's an element of that in healthcare increases. They'll ask for 8%, and they'll get 5%. But is that a loss for them? Is that a loss when they get 5%?
No.
What do they really
want? They know what they really
Look,
want, 4 or 5.
Everybody, it's a basic tool of negotiation. So look, we really felt like we needed to push back. We did it last year. A lot of attention was brought to it. We pushed back against it this year. I was pleased that the health commissioner did not grant the increases that the insurance companies wanted. We advocated for no increases at all. Look, we're at a time of COVID, okay, where, particularly last year, going into this year, people are losing employment. Right. So your ability to get health care through your employer is gone because you no longer have a job. Now you got to go out and buy it on the individual market. They were looking for increases in rates on the individual market. So now when I'm at my worst time economically,
you're going
to
hit me again.
So that didn't make a lot of sense. And look, the reality is that and everybody in any kind of insurance, compared to how companies and individuals were doing, did much better. I mean, there were fewer procedures, fewer claims. And as a result, the companies are in good financial shape.
Sure they are.
Strong financial shape. And so to
All
me,
insurance companies are.
absolutely. I mean, you look, I talk to friends that do auto insurance,
Yes.
and they'll be the first to say, we're going to lower our rates. They're going to lower our rates
Yeah.
because we have fewer claims this year. We want to give back. AAA is a good example of that.
Yeah, they get 15% back, but they probably save 40.
Sure. So they're at least going in the right direction
Right.
as opposed to going up.
Right,
So
exactly, yeah.
look, for us, and look, we did our homework here too. We hired independent actuaries to analyze what they were doing and make recommendations. We're going to continue to do that. I'm glad that the health commissioner took a step in the right direction. In our view, respectfully, I thought he could have gone farther. We're going to keep advocating. 3 years ago, we weren't advocating at all.
Right.
I mean, we just weren't in the space. Again, to me, that's what active means. If you can help the people of the state of Rhode Island, you need to be active in that space. The words that I hate to hear the most are, we've never done that before. We need to be asking ourselves, why haven't we been doing it before?
Exactly.
And if we should be doing it, let's figure out a way to do it.
That makes sense to me. And we haven't. Some of the things you're talking about have never been dealt with before.
Yeah, look, in our civil division, I'm incredibly proud of how they have been, again, more active environmentally. We brought the largest Clean Air Act settlement case against a polluter that was, shredding cars without any pollution controls at all. It's just that same company was doing work around the country with a permit, a Clean Air Act permit. They didn't get one in Rhode Island. Are Rhode Islanders entitled to any less safe air or healthy air than if you live in Massachusetts?
Right,
Of course
exactly.
not is
Yeah.
the answer. So we needed to step up and do something there. We've gotten involved in access to the shore, where a company at the end of Public Street was blocking off the end of the street. Well, Public Street is aptly named, right? It's for the public.
Right.
So we got involved there, and we've gotten involved in other public access events. We got involved in a couple of regulatory matters involving CRMC, where I felt that they weren't doing the kind of regulatory fact-finding that they needed to do to justify their decisions. A couple of those things are going through the courts right now. We got involved in the medical waste recycling facility, put right in the middle of a neighborhood and a beautiful new campus, a new college campus right there on off of Division Street
in East Greenwich.
In East Greenwich, yeah, right on the East Greenwich Warwick line.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful new college campus in there now.
New England Tech, yeah.
Correct.
They've been
Beautiful.
on my show, the head of that.
That's a phenomenal place.
Beautiful place.
And you're putting in a facility there with no previous data to understand how that's going to impact
Right,
health and safety. We intervene there too. So again, if you're just sitting in your office, you don't do any of that. But if you care about getting out there on behalf of the people of the state and you're interested in being active in your job, then that's the kind of work you're doing. And look, and I think that is what recruits great talent to an office. I find that the younger lawyers, the lawyers earlier in their career path, because they're not all young people. They could be a little bit older, but still
Right.
early, in your legal career. They want to come in and do meaningful work. They're choosing to come because the work that they're doing, whether it be in healthcare or the environment or consumer protection, it's meaningful to them, but more importantly, it's meaningful to the people of the state. If you're not providing good work to people, you're not going to get the best people. The best people want to do impactful, interesting, challenging work. And I think we're delivering on that promise to them when I recruited them, and they're delivering on their promise to me, which is to make an impact on the people of the state. I couldn't be more proud of them.
Well, you've got a reputation, and a good one.
I was going to say, clarify.
All right, here you go. Pick one. Go ahead. No, I'm not giving you that one.
All right,
I'll pick one too.
there you go.
Are we having fun yet? It's not. Oh, this one's mine. Well, I think we kind of talked about this. Pride in Rhode Island, the litter. Have you ever been to Canada?
Yes, beautiful.
What is the
Western
first?
Canada.
What is the first thing you notice when you cross the border? The very first thing.
Well, I flew in, so it was, the first thing I noticed is the airspace didn't look all that different. But when I landed, we went to the Canadian Rockies, my wife and our two boys.
Oh, nice.
And just
Oh, you
incredible.
really went way west.
Oh yeah, we went west, and we went all the way up to Jasper, which is incredibly northern British Columbia. Oh, just incredibly pristine and beautiful and clean.
Clean is
Yeah,
the term,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that?
Well, look, I think we can in some places, and I don't know what it's like in downtown Toronto.
I do.
Well, you would know.
I do.
I haven't been there.
I've been to Toronto, I've been to Montreal, I've been to Quebec City, and they're all clean.
Yeah.
And I stopped and talked to one guy. I see this guy on the sidewalk, and he's got this, I'd never seen anything like it. It looked like it was a cross between a snowblower a vacuum cleaner, and it had a plow. It looked like it could have a plow
Right.
on it. And this was in the summertime. And he had an 8-inch hose at the end of it and a handle on it. And he would drive on the sidewalk, and he would vacuum up all the trash
Wow.
in the gutters and on the sidewalk. And I said, "You work for the city?" He goes, "No." I said, "Well, who do you work for?" He says, "This is his payment for collecting a subsidiary, money from the
Yeah.
state, being on welfare." So he's given one block or 2 city blocks or whatever it is, and that's his job in the summertime is to vacuum up everything, clean up everything. In the wintertime, that converts into a snow thrower, and he cleans off the sidewalks on his block.
Interesting.
And it also offers accountability, because when they come by and they see his block's not done, they know who didn't do their job. And that's all over Canada. You'll notice that as soon as you cross the border, if you drive
Yeah.
up to Vermont and go across the border, if you drive up to New Hampshire or go across the border, or Maine, you'll see the same thing.
Interesting.
As soon as you get across the
Yeah.
border. And it's sad. It's sad that we're not like that.
Well, not everywhere. I mean, as I said earlier, I think there are some people who really care about this, and there's some people who don't. And hopefully over time it'll get better.
Let's hope. You having fun yet?
I always have fun with you, Bob. You know that.
Well, you spent 50 minutes with Bob already?
It goes by fast.
It does. This bothers me a lot. Credit card rates. Now my credit score is over 800. I don't have a balance on credit
Yeah.
cards. I pay automatically. My cards are paid off automatically by my account, by my checking account. But I know a lot of people do carry balances and large balances. And the credit interest rate is ridiculous.
Very high, yeah.
I looked at, I opened the mail yesterday, and I saw, somebody trying to send me a card. And even though I have a high credit rating, which they must know to send me the card, I guess, I hope they know, I expect they know, 26.99%. And if I didn't have good credit, it would be up to 33.99. That's loan shark material.
Yeah, look, I mean,
I know that's not your office. That comes from the General
Fed.
Assembly.
Well, and the Feds too. The Feds set those rates, but it's another term for it would be potentially usurious. I think payday lending is an equal problem.
Oh, that's terrible. Payday lending.
Yeah, look, and I think we've.
That's even worse.
Yes.
That can be up to 300%.
Correct, and the General Assembly has taken that up in some quarters. I think we continue to work with others to push that as an issue. I just don't buy the argument, well, this is the only way people can get credit.
No way. And you're
just,
killing them. You're absolutely putting the crutch on
It's like putting
that.
economic handcuffs on somebody.
Exactly.
And I hope, hopefully to break through that. I will say this, that for the most egregious actors in payday lending, so look, there are some that are authorized by state statute. That's got to get changed to reach
Right,
them.
right.
But there are others who go beyond even that. And this change in the consumer protection statute that we talked about at the top of the show, it's going to give my office an opportunity, an ability now to investigate them and go after them. Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like those who have the least amount of advantage are the ones get hurt the worst. Absolutely.
There's no doubt.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
No question about
And I don't know why the General Assembly stands for it.
Yeah, look, it's.
I know the lobbyists have a lot to say about that. But I go back to when I first.
Let me stop you there for a minute.
Go ahead.
The lobbyists have a lot to say about it. Do they have a lot of say in the decision, or do they talk a lot? If they're talking a lot, I'm okay with it. If they have a lot of say in the decision making, I don't.
Well, they must. Why would any state rep or state senator be against lowering the interest rate to these
Great
poor
question.
people?
Hey, look, again, I try to stay out of other people's shops. I'm the Attorney General. I pick my spots when it comes to making strong statements of advocacy. But I'll say this. You are asking a question, what legislators? I'll ask this question. What legislators are able to have an impact? Meaning, who ultimately decides, at least in years past, whether an issue ever saw the light of day?
Speaker.
Who decided whether it came out of committee? Who decided whether it
Right,
came
the
forward?
Finance Committee, the head of the Finance Committee, the head.
So until that changes, and I think it has changed under Speaker Sakarchi, changed quite a bit.
Yep.
But until you get to a place where legislation that has some element of merit gets a hearing, gets a vote, who's
on
deciding?
the entire
Correct.
legislature.
Correct. See, to me, that's all the legislation that I put up there. That's all I ever wanted. Give me a chance to make my case. Give me a hearing.
Right. Give me a fair shot.
I'll explain why I think it's important. If somebody makes a better argument, I can live with that. If I get out of hearing, give me a floor vote. Let's debate it. Let's talk about it.
Right,
I think
right.
that's what the people of Rhode Island deserve. Right? They're sending people up there. We're electing legislators every 2 years, not to go up there and do what somebody else tells them to do. I'm not suggesting that's how it works universally. Right. I'm just saying, I think they want their legislators to be able to get up there and say what they think publicly and debate it back and forth.
Right.
And where we've seen that happen, reproductive rights is a good example of that. Plenty of strong views on both sides. But the legislature debated it, voted on it, and reached a decision. And now the public knows what the outcome was.
But it got out of committee.
It got out of committee.
Other things don't get out of committee.
There's a lot of things that don't get out. Again.
But why?
Well,
why?
Well, that's the question. Why?
Well, I think I know the answer. It's the lobby. It's the lobbyists.
Again, my view, and I think it's gotten significantly better under Speaker Sicarci. I'm just going to say it. I think it has, and I think the reality is that, look, I have no problem. I have a lobbyist up there. He's lobbying for my legislation. Right? He's a member of my office. There's nothing wrong with being a lobbyist. But the question is, you've made your pitch.
Right.
Now let's vet it. Let's hear it. Let's vote on it. Right? I'm not talking about crazy stuff that is a waste of everyone's time. But we know how to make that distinction. And look, I think the trend lines are better over the last year, and I have no doubt that they're going to continue. But you asked the question, why hasn't payday lending seen the light of day? Has it even been debated?
No.
It needs to be, in my opinion.
It's crazy. 300% interest.
Terrible.
I think 26 is ridiculous.
Yes, it's
300%.
It's taken advantage of the most economically vulnerable.
Right.
There's no question about it.
I mean, all they have to do is not borrow this week and wait till next week, and they can pay for it. But they don't think that way, apparently.
Sure. Yeah. It's not far off from some of the organized crime cases we used to do.
All right, we got a couple more. That's what we only got a couple more here. I'm going to grab a couple more. I'm having fun.
Always.
We did this one, the Providence Mayor, naming the major. We got to hit that one.
We got hard questions here.
Oh, come on. What is your office doing to target violent crime, particularly in Providence and other urban areas?
Yeah, look, the reality is...
This is your last question.
Yeah, look, we are working hard to identify those that are driving violent crime. We know who they are. So we have put together a group of, it's still in the works a little bit with some of the other departments, but a team that consists of investigators from my office, Providence detectives, Pawtucket and Central Falls detectives, that are working to identify those who drive violent crime. So why have 4 departments, including my investigators, working together, led by the head of my BCI unit, who I worked with when he ran ATF, or was really a top-notch ATF agent here. Because these folks who are shooting at Providence and dealing drugs in Providence, or engaging in violent crime in Providence, are not staying only in Providence. They're moving around the urban core.
They sure are.
And look, what else are we doing? So we've hired an analyst to help analyze relationships among these folks so we can solve crimes faster. How do you do that? Among the ways is analyzing shell casings. Remember we talked about all those cases all over the place?
Yes.
Analyze them quickly and...
Can see where they all came from?
Correct. The problem is that the turnaround time, except in homicides, is very, very long. So we're looking into buying another, what's called the NIBIN machine, so we can analyze those casings in real time. Faster, so we can solve these crimes more quickly.
Cool. Well, you did it. You spent an hour with Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Great to see you, as always.
Always a pleasure.
Same. Thanks for having me on.
So what are you doing now? What's next? What's your day like?
I'll walk out of here. I'll check the texts and the emails and figure out where I'm going. I think I have a meeting with Mayor Grebian. He wants to come in and see me about something.
Mayor Grebian, tell him you spent an hour with the only guy that beat him. We ran against each other years ago for city council. I dropped out of the race. He ran against a woman that I ended up supporting, and he ended up losing not only to her, but to me, even after I dropped out.
Rhode Island is a very, very small world.
It's crazy, huh? Well, that's it, folks. We spent an hour with Bob and the Attorney General of the state of Rhode Island, Peter Neronha. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you. Good to see you as always.
Same here.